meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it is.
At this time, if we all could rise for a pledge of allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Joanne to adopt the agenda. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll start this one. Joanne.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Lena.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Passes 9-0. Moving that, Board of Education reports. Anyone? Kathy.
I have two things to report. First of all, I'd like to remind everybody that we are going to have a Board of Education Community Forum. It's going to be March 25th on Wednesday at the Community Center from 7 to 9 p.m. All 4 candidates are going to be there. Bring your questions and get to know the candidates because we have our spring elections are right around the corner. And the second thing I'd like to announce is there's going to be a community conversation about climate change and how it affects Adams County. Saturday, March 28th from 10 to noon at the Adams County Community Center. This is kind of exciting because one of the keynote speakers actually graduated from our high school. Kevin Crawford is a professor at UW-Oshkosh. And he will be one of the keynote speakers. Those of you who know Ruth Check, that's her son, and also another professor from UWSP in sustainability. And his name is David Barbier. The topics to include will be the difference between weather and climate, greenhouse gas effects, etc., and just some of the effects of Adams County. Plus, there will be time for conversation. There also are representatives from local organizations such as the Adams County Lake Association, Emergency Management, Solid Waste and Recycling, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Master Gardeners, etc. Free admission, 10 to noon, refreshments will be served, and I encourage all the instructors to make sure that your students know this. It's on Saturday, 10 to noon. Thank you.
Jeff.
We started our post-prom fundraising. You'll be hit up for funds for post-prom. For you, all of you who do not know about the program, we like to put on something for the kids after they attend prom, so they're not out and about. It will run this year from 11 until 3. We have organized activities for them to hopefully keep them out of trouble and keep them occupied. We need to raise some money for it. It's not free, those activities. We have, I think, 3 opportunities. There's going to be a safe room, there's going to be like a casino night, and then laser tag. So it should be quite interesting for them. But again, when you get hit up, if you do have a junior, make sure that they fill out their forms and get them into the office by Friday, and then we'll hit you up next week in phone calls
Where's post-prom held?
at the high school.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ron.
I was going to go to the game at high school between Marathon and Chelsea. And as I came the back way, I drove up and I'm looking at all these cars on the parking lot. And it looked like an extra amount of buses. So I walked up and I had recalled that there was something out on a band concert at 7. So I figured I'll stop in there first. Excellent band concert by our kids in high school. I don't know if any of you had a chance to, but that's one of the opportunities to look at on, I think it's May 4th, their spring concert. After I got done, I took in the basketball team between Marathon and Shelley. And as I was sitting, kind of waiting at the end, there was somebody that was supposed to, at least I thought was going to meet up with me, but he evidently left early. But as I was sitting there, a person walked up to Mr. Gould and complimented him on the venue and what was going on at the high school. And I think that as a community, you can't go wrong with not only the Fine Arts Center, but also when we have an opportunity to host a regional tournament or something like that, we need to take advantage of it because it helps let people know that we do have things going on at the school district that are great. So thanks, Garrett, for your time, and Mr. Moore also pass on a word to Mrs. Harder, or Miss Harder. Thank you.
Go on, Melissa.
I went to the honors choir for our region last month, and our high school, our choir kids did really well and really looked really good with their presentation and seemed to do really represent our school well. That's been good. It was
And don't forget about the musical, the high school musical this week.
Anybody else? With that, moving on, student of the month. Me and Tom will present today, and we'll start with Grand Marsh.
Maddie. Oh, Lots of fellas here.
Which one is this one?
This is Maddie.
This is Andy.
Yes.
All right.
So this is Maddie Hintz, and she's a second grader at Grand Marsh. For this month, our student of the month in our building was chosen. Everybody turns in a student of the month, and our art teacher had actually chosen Maddie. She couldn't be here tonight, but what she had written to me was that Maddie follows the 3 B's. She's kind to others, she's a good listener, an excellent role model. Not only can I always count on her to do what's expected, but she's creative, thoughtful, and helpful as well. And I have been lucky enough to have her, this is my 2nd year having her, and I have to agree with everything that was said, and she really exemplifies what it means to be a great student and takes her job very seriously. Even if she doesn't like it, she is never going to complain about it, ever. She just does what she needs to do and encourages others to do their best too. So, congratulations.
Congratulations. No, are the other Grand Marsh students here from last month?
No, she's not.
She's not. Okay.
I was hoping you might be. Come on.
We'll work something out. Come on.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. That works out well.
Untitled Elementary.
Is it this month or last month's first?
This one is Gracie Allen.
All right. Kristen Boones is going to do that, and then Alicia Twitter will do Eastern School next month.
All right, so this is Gracie. She is my student. I teach 4th grade Adams Friendship Elementary. She is a reliable source of leadership in the classroom, and she comes to school ready to learn. She uses her class time wisely and follows directions, and she's always engaged in her learning. She takes initiative when something needs to be completed or someone needs help or a friend without being asked by me. Gracie is a positive role model to all students of the expectations of Adams Friendship Elementary. I am so privileged to have this wonderful young lady in my classroom.
Do it. say, yes, you did. And he complimented her on that. Mr. Anderson said, Desi is great to have in class. She's a leader, and other students follow her lead. She thinks outside the box and really sets a great example for our final project. I can vouch for that. I had Desiree in class this last year. She's one of my daughter's best friends at CR.
Represent our school district in our regional, and one of them actually made it to our state spelling bee. So this is Kennedy Manzer. She is a 5th grader at the middle school, and she currently, we had our school spelling bee, and she beat out all the kids there. About 5 students went and represented our students at the regional spelling bee in February, and she got 2nd place. She was really disappointed because she was reading a book, and that student's a name in the book threw her spelling off of the word that she got. And she goes, it had an H at the end. What was your word that you missed? They'll always remember the word they missed.
It was amino.
Amino. So, and the student's name in the book, or the kid's name,
Mino.
was what?
Mino.
Mino. And it was with an H at the end, so it threw her off. And so congratulations for that. This is Eddie Reese. He is a 6th grader at the middle school, and he represented our school district at the regional script spelling bee and received 1st place out of 5th grade through 8th grade students as a 6th grader, which is really awesome. Be very proud of yourself. And then was able to go this Saturday to the state. It was actually called, I didn't realize the name was so great. It was Badger State Spelling Bee. And you made it through 3 rounds, I hear.
No, I made it through 2 when I got out.
Oh, you got out on the 3rd one. And I'm guessing you remember the word you missed.
Yes.
Yes. What was the word you missed?
I really prefer not to say.
But he did represent us very well, and for a 6th grader to make it that far, that's amazing. And guess what? You have 2 more years to go back. Yeah. Well, congratulations, guys. We did have one other student. His name's Dylan Brownell. He was top 4 in the regional, too. So we almost had 1st and 2nd place go to state. So very exciting. Okay? Okay, sorry. I don't want to take it in front of you.
Donations for our conference, but we are still accepting and in need of more. We have a council meeting on Thursday, March 5th, and have another meeting planned for March 19th and March 25th. The annual Spring Senior Citizen Dinner was Sunday, March 8th. We had a good turnout and good member participation. We had several students attend Ignite at UW-Madison, and those students are looking forward to meeting with Mr. Moore to discuss ideas we can bring back to our school. We'll be handing out Government Day slips this week, which is on May 15th. It will be a search and rescue theme at the Rome Town Hall and the park. And there's only 25 more days until state conference, which is April 5th and 6th. Our council has been working countless hours to prepare and represent our district as a host. All our t-shirts have been designed, speakers have been lined up, letters have been sent in from state government representatives, welcome letters to registered schools have been sent, birthday banners and thank you cards have been printed, Easter egg coloring sheets have been made, and a lot more things. As we get closer, several more work days during Excel and after school are scheduled to work on things. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you. With that, we will go to public comments at this time. Linda Bula, please feel free to use the podium.
I appreciate this opportunity to speak before you, and my subject matter is about the closing of the Grand Marsh School, and I've given a copy to all of the board members, and I have it in written form, so I will read it from my heart. I am here tonight to hopefully convince you to take more time and thought before any final decision is made about the closure of the Grand Marsh School. As a member of the Adams County Economic Development, I personally am concerned of the effects that closing the Grand Marsh School would have on our county as a whole and the economic impact that it would cause. The continuation of any of our outlining community-based schools is the key to our large county's economic development. Unfortunately, at present, the only community-based school in our large county, other than those here in Adams Friendship, is the Grand Marsh School. This school is key to our infrastructure. When talking about the infrastructure needed for economic development of any community, people most often forget to think about their schools as part of that infrastructure. In fact, schools are one of the most important parts of infrastructure of any community. Businesses and people alike are looking at the school systems and how strong and attractive they are prior to any decisions of moving to any area. People will always gravitate to where their children will get the best education and extracurricular activities that they are looking for, and will commute to their jobs if need be. Businesses will also look for the same benefits when considering the availability of potential employees and enticing employees to longevity. While I understand the financial issues you have explained at your previous meetings about the closing of Grand Marsh School, and I also understand the formula the state uses is unfair toward our rural school districts across Wisconsin as a whole. Because I feel strongly about this issue, I have already approached the Adams County Economic Committee, the Adams County Farm Bureau, the State of Wisconsin Farm Bureau, and when talking with the Wisconsin Farm Bureau District Director, I also challenged him to work with other farm organizations to use their lobbyists and help us with our legislators to get this formula changed to have a more equitable distribution of money for our rural school districts across the state. I felt that using groups such as these would be more beneficial and have more impact with our legislatures than individual one-on-one contact. I would encourage you as a school board to take a similar approach in your efforts to create and increase momentum for a more equitable distribution of state and federal funding. Now, for the immediate issue is the closing of Grand Marsh School. I have several thoughts and alternative action proposals that you, the school board, could adopt, which I feel would be better for our students, their families, and our community. When considering the overall impact that the closing of the Grand Marsh School, I feel that you have not addressed the current middle school and administrative building. These two buildings are the oldest in our district, much older than the Grand Marsh building, and you will need to deal with the numerous issues involved in the continuing usage of these buildings now and in the coming years. Both of these two buildings are very inefficient and very costly to maintain. The present condition of the aging 3-story middle school, which currently houses all 5th through 8th grade students, is a potential safety hazard. In its present condition and layout, the evacuation of students in case of a fire, severe storm, and other emergencies could result in injuries or worse. Other safety issues that need to be addressed include old wiring, old water lines throughout, asbestos issues, heating and cooling issues, to name a few. Closing of the Grand Marsh School does not deal with these even more expensive issues the district needs to address. Another issue with closing the community-based schools is that it results in even more students being bused. Many students in our district already spend long, draining hours on buses.
Mrs. Boole, we only have 1 minute left, just so you know.
Okay, adding more students to that, to an already limited supply, well, let me skip then, so that I get to the heart. When you sold the school, that school, the Russia Creek Elementary, it reopened as another school. Students are moving there. So I'm going to jump to my immediate, okay? Instead of and I have it in writing if anybody wants a copy. Instead of closing the Grand Marsh School, I do have an alternative suggestion for you to consider. move the 5th and 6th grades that were once at Grand Marsh School back to Grand Marsh. This would then have all 4 through K grades. You can even stretch out the boundaries a little. Take the remainder of 5th and 6th, put them in AF. Take 7th and 8th grade and put them in the high school. I understand there's possible room for that to occur. Get rid of the old portion of the middle school, see what is salvageable of the additions that were added in the past, and move your administration offices to that location. By eliminating the entire administration building and the old portion of the middle school, you would be saving inevitable future cost burdens.
That's good, Linda, thank you.
Okay,
You can close, I'll let you give a couple seconds to close if you'd like.
in conclusion, in the hard part of it is addressing, your financial and safety hazards, inevitable elimination, replacement of 2 old buildings in use, the current middle school and the administration building. And in conclusion, closing schools rarely saves money. The closing of the Grand Marsh School would only not address the long-term financial hardships of our school district, but would actually create more problems in the long term. Similar community-based schools not only can offer a better overall education experience, but also serve to build better families and communities. Furthermore, these schools are the key to the economic development of our county and the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Doreen Olson.
Thank you. It is easy to always be pointing the finger at the state for the financial issues, but the board and the business office needs to stand up and claim their piece of the pie. You spent over $435,000 on Russia Cree in the 5 years prior to closing it, and then you sold it for less than $200,000. Plus you gave all the kitchen and playground equipment away with the building. Now I know you're going to say it was included in the price, but when the administrator and the principal promise on multiple occasions in these public meetings to move at least some of the equipment to the middle school, and it doesn't happen, then you have given it away. To not sell as much as possible to recover the massive loss is extremely poor business. What's confusing to me is that the decision to close Russia Cree was your solution to keeping the district open. You closed a school that actually cost the district the least per student to educate. Since you passed a referendum and were able to increase the amount you collect per student from the taxpayers. And here we are 2 years later with the same threat that the district could be run by the state, that you don't have enough money unless you close Grand Marsh. You spent $10,000 on a study which recommended that you should not add any more students to the middle school. You ignored the only recommendation in the study, and the failing test scores show the results of adding more students to a school that already had issues. The study had figured out how much you spend per student to educate, which is several thousand less than what you collect. So I'm trying to figure out where the money is going if it isn't for the students. I understand that there are other costs such as administration and transportation, since transportation was only calculated in the cost in education for Grand Marsh and Russia Cree. And there's the extracurricular. But it's not like you're going to spend this extra money you save on these students. Maybe you need to look into where you're spending too much and cut there. Our community has always found value in our community schools. I have not heard one parent in favor of closing these schools. Even AFE parents have not been in favor because they increase class size. And every educator will tell you that class size matters. The board has acknowledged in the past that the limiting factor at AFE is the cafeteria. AFE may have classroom capacity for 500, but the cafeteria certainly doesn't. With the school serving all students a free breakfast, you will not be able to get them all in. You have already took half of the music room when closing Russia Cree. How are you planning to feed an additional 60 students breakfast before school begins? Have any of the board members been to AFE during breakfast time? Have you witnessed the students having to look at a wall to eat or eating in the hallways? At the minimum, do right by these children and expand the cafeteria before closing Grand Marsh. I certainly hope that your attitude isn't that at least they get to eat. I'm pretty certain I know how the vote will go because it seems the board feels the responsibility to support the administrator. But I want to remind the board that they are elected to be representatives of the community. Please listen to the community and represent them. So what I really want to say is to the parents, that you don't have to accept this decision. Moving to a bigger, crowded school is not best for everyone. There are alternatives. When Russia Creek closed, some chose to homeschool and have been very happy with that choice. You can open enroll and choose an online course. I knew the school would not follow through on their promise to keep 5th and 6th graders separate from the 7th and 8th graders. And within 2 months of bringing them to the middle school, I was right with their school dance. I chose to open enroll my child to the neighboring Westfield School District, which includes Oxford. They still find value in small community schools. Overall, it's been an easy transition, and truly I couldn't be happier. I worried about how we would make it work, but really it's been easier than I thought it would be. My son's classroom size is 14, and it's the main reason why I chose to go to Coloma. The one-on-one time is beneficial for all the students. It shows in the number of students on the honor roll and high honor roll list.
1 minute, Cory.
And also the state scores. The small school atmosphere is more like a family and truly welcoming. I wish you all the best and do what's right for your child and family. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, wants your policy? Somebody signed you up?
I don't have anything formally written.
That's fine.
I know previously some staff had gotten together and talked after a conversation with Dr. Werman about questions that we had. If it was voted that the building would not be closed or vacated, what might happen then? I know you all have that, so I'm not going to read through that. I guess just, it's hard speaking as a teacher and educator in a building, separating those roles of teacher and community member and parent. So I think I'm speaking as a parent of someone going to the middle school, as a community member, and just kind of reiterating what Linda had said in looking at, I know our finances are not good, and I know it would be a hard decision, and I do not envy any of you with having to make a decision. But looking at, I know when I went to the community meeting, and there were financial papers passed out looking at what would we save by closing Grand Marsh. And a comment was made by a member there of the community that said it's just a Band-Aid. It's just like a one-year fix, a short term. And then finding out things in the last month, there were things about the middle school that I was not aware of, as far as some conditions that Linda had spoken about. So I think that was one of my big questions was, has our facilities committee, are they looking at that? Like what are the savings of that building versus a different building, or like the admin building that had been brought up a few years ago or the last couple years. And just hoping that all of your questions that you are wondering about as voting members, if your questions are all answered before you make your decision. And I think I just felt like we needed to have someone from our building represent, not that I feel like I'm truly representing, I am, but I'm not, I guess. And I don't know, I know somebody had mentioned about questions and answers, but I don't think this is a Q&A kind of a, no, which is good because I don't want to answer any questions. I'm already nervous enough as it is, but I think that would be my biggest concern, looking at all of our options carefully before, and just that I don't know if we're ready to make that vote to actually close the building. Looking at other options, ways to save money, or is there time, like we have one more year for our facilities committee to be looking at the options? Or for maybe some of you, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, that's all the public comments that were signed up for. We'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Kathy? Thank you. Motion made by Joanne, seconded by Kathy to adopt the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, we have some co-curricular hirees: Brian Morley for 7th grade baseball, Adam Novinsky for middle school track, Sabrina Parker for 8th grade softball, and Nancy Glavin for 7th grade softball. Also retirement from Ellen Wozelick. Is that everybody else do it. All right. Teacher at AFP. There was a donation to Grand Marsh from the ACB Bank, Adams Community Bank, for $200 for field trips, and there was also a $1,600 check from Shem Contracting Company for the activity account at Grand Marsh. Also meeting minutes from February 10th for finance, policy, and regular. Questions, discussion? Hearing none, we'll start this whole Ken.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Lana.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Excuse me.
Yes.
God bless you.
Holy man, I should feel good tonight. All those ones. Thank you. It passes 9-0. Moving on, reports. Run, hide, and fight. I see the sheriff and
and Deputy Roberts here. We have a video that we share with our school family.
I think we're going to be able to see it, right? No?
Yeah.
You guys want to talk first or you want to see the video first?
Yeah, I'll go through a quick, just brief summary of what this video is. So, Deputy Roberts, one of the SROs, primarily out of the high school. Deputy Corbett, you can see is to the left of me. There's the other SRO, primarily out of the middle school. With me is Sheriff York, who magically appears in the video. Yeah, I apologize for the acting skills in advance. We put this video together in hopes of educating kids on if we do have a situation where there's an active shooter in the building, they would know how to react to it. The video is called Run, Hide, Fight. It's the steps we use. We go through and talk about. We thought it was good for them to see us doing this video and putting it together. Granted, most of them laughed at our acting as well. So, but it's good for them to see us. They know who we are. We see them on a daily basis at school. They're familiar with us. We'll go through. We'll talk about some things. I am going to ask. There's a second part of this video that I had added to it, not knowing that there'd be some younger children here. I'm going to ask that video gets cut off after this one is played.
Just let us know.
Okay, perfect. So you can go ahead and play the video.
The one where it's the other people reacting?
Yes. Yep.
Hello, Deputy Roberts, Kansas County Sheriff's Office. With me today is Deputy Corbett. We are school resource officers for the Adams Central School District. We're looking to talk with you today in regards to making a Run, Hide, Fight video. This is a program we use if there's ever in the school where there's an active shooter. We look to get out of the building, law enforcement's arrival. I will now turn it over to Deputy Corbett to talk about the first step of that.
The first option in any intruder situation or active shooter is always to run. What you're looking to do is you're looking to get out of the building and get as far away from danger or the threat as you can. Drop whatever you're doing and you run directly away from the threat. In the event that you can't run away, it's important that you hide into a safe location. Deputy Roberts will talk to you a little bit about what to do if you're hiding from a threat.
Hiding. The most important part is make sure you are out of sight. The doors are locked, barricaded if possible. If you're in the hallways, you are to get to the nearest classroom, nearest room, to where you can lock the door, make sure you stay out of sight. Most important thing is make sure you remain quiet. No cell phones, tablets, any kind of devices that will light up and show where your location is. We'll turn it back over to Deputy Corbett to go over the fight part.
The last option, if you're unable to run or unable to hide, would be to try and fight the threat. In a situation like this, you're going to use whatever weapon you can find, whatever you can use that can be a weapon in order to stop that person from hurting you or other people. You should be using an aggressive fighting style and attacking that person as a team. And this absolutely should be your last resort in a situation where you can't run or hide. While you're fighting, if another opportunity presents itself to run away or to start fighting in a different location, you should start doing that as well. Now we'd like to introduce Sheriff Brent York, who is going to go over some additional concepts for you to keep in mind whenever a situation like this presents itself.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Brent York. I'm going to talk with you today about our response to an active shooter situation at the school district. So we train that our response is immediate and that we go to the threat. So when we enter the building, we may go past victims or people looking for help to stop the threat. Once we stop the threat, then we'll begin assessing victims and clearing the school. What we need from students and staff is to follow our commands, keep your hands visible to us, and exit the building as directed. You'll also see that when officers begin arriving, we'll be in different attire. Some may be in plain clothes, such as the way I'm dressed today. We may have other officers from different agencies, but we will all be looking to help you and stop the threat.
Next, I'd like to address the door locks that were just recently installed in the school year and the importance of these. These were installed so that if a student is in the room and needs to lock the door and there's no teacher available, the teacher's out of the room, the importance of this is to be able to go in the door and hit the button, therefore the door is now locked, not allowing anyone to enter. Statistically, and previous active shooter incidents, they have been known to, if the door is locked, to bypass that classroom and move on to where they can get access to. These were a great addition to the school and the safety of the students. So.
This one.
Do I have a minute to talk? Is there enough time? Yes. Thank you for practicing. That's great. So with this video, this run hide fight was put together by Homeland Security. That's that second part of that video. The Homeland Security video we did show to the high school students, felt that they were old enough to see that video. It does show a guy going to a building, an office building, with a gun, how the people reacted, how they all came together, what they did. And then also with this, we also went to every building. We walked in every classroom, answered any questions that teachers had, students had. We made sure that teachers were prepared with things, go bags, medical bags, things that they may have needed. Sheriff was with us. We answered all those questions that they had for us. We kind of explained what to expect if something like this did happen. Again, when in our response, there's going to be people from different counties. There's going to be people from different agencies. They're going to be in different uniforms. The sheriff and I recently attended a training that was put together by, I want to say it was DOJ, Department of Justice through Wisconsin. They put together these pretty nice banners. I talked with Mr. Moore and Mr. Storman about getting him in the high school. I also chatted with Dr. Wormuth. I think it's good to have these present and visible in there. The more the kids see it, the more they're going to know what they're, if this does happen, what to do. So pretty much goes over everything we talk about. This is exactly what we read off of while we recorded that video. The run, hide, fight, steps to do, things to keep in mind. So, is it okay if I touch on the threat assessment stuff? Go ahead. Deputy Corbett and I, as well as the sheriff, and then Ms. Holmes have worked on putting together a threat assessment for the school district. And with that, any threat that comes towards the district, any building or any student at that building, we conduct what's called a threat assessment. That is where we go through and we document who, what, where, why, and when. With that, we do a lot of interviewing of kids, of who made that comment. I'm sure we've all seen in the news recently, this is something that's been big, with kids making comments about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and how do we stop this? How do we document it, and what's the next step? So we document it through the sheriff's office. Deputy Corbett and I create reports. We attach that documentation with those reports. and then we take appropriate action from there for what we feel needs to be done. And then we also forward that to the school district as well as all the counselors. Ms. Granty gets a copy of it, the social workers get a copy of it, so they're aware of that threat assessment as well. And that's to provide resources to that child. What can we do to help? What, once we determine the law enforcement standpoint, what else can we do? So we've created that. We found ways to document it through the school as well. It's a very helpful tool. It's helped us a lot, and just documenting small things, so we can always go back on that and look at it and say, okay, we've had this once before, it's happened again, let's readdress this issue differently than what we did the first time. So again, it's been very helpful. Can I take questions at all if anyone has any, or I don't know that anyone would? School board members?
Go ahead, let's start with the board. Do the board have questions?
Have you run one of these?
Like scenarios themselves, we have not. They're very difficult too. I know we've been in conversation about having a kind of like an active shooter preparedness training, and that's going to be, I assume that'll be with school district members, teachers, law enforcement staff, EMS, fire department, everybody you can think of. I don't know where it's at with it. Now maybe the sheriff can talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's something that we'll be planning. It's obviously a full-scale exercise. It's a lot to coordinate and bring together. But we do obviously attend training, continue to educate ourselves, and if something like this would happen, it's just a matter of bringing it all together and running an exercise.
What we've talked about is starting with tabletop drills with our staff in buildings, which I think is a really good place. You're actually kind of sitting around a table and talking about the building. You have a building map. You talk about run, hide, fight. You talk about reunification. And everything associated with an event like this. But it's a conversation around a table versus bringing an actual active shooter event into a school.
That's one thing that's been extremely helpful too, is Dr. Williams bring a ton of knowledge about this stuff from prior school district, people he's worked with, so we've been able to take things from other school districts, implement it in ours, take things from CISA 5 as well, implement it in ours. It's come together really well, so. Go ahead.
Do you think we're pretty well prepared as a school district?
It's a question I get quite often. I would say that I think the sheriff's done a great job with sending Deputy Corbett and I to trainings to prepare for this stuff. You're learning from agencies who've gone through this. We were just at a training again where we spoke with the Oshkosh, that sort of how prepared they were, things that they did, things how we reacted. So I would say I think we prepared very well for it. If that was to ever come, I think as a department we are. As a community as well, working with resources to, what do we do afterwards? How do we get this? How do we get that? I know Ms. Holmes has done a great job of working with us and getting all that together. Dr. Williams, every administrator, reaching out to those buildings, look at unification points. Where can we put kids to get them back with parents? It's all that stuff. So I would say yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
The best deterrent for an event like this is the relationships that our teaching staff, our people services staff, and our SROs have with our students. And we're very fortunate that our SROs are actively involved in the life of our buildings, and that makes a huge difference. So it's a positive.
Board have any other questions?
One other, are you doing this outreach with community organizations?
Like this
Businesses?
this kind of video here?
Yeah.
I believe we have. I talked to Lieutenant Sipla today, who's a patrol lieutenant. And I know he's taught it at a few churches, it sounds like, but.
Yep, and also I've been working with Mid-State, and they actually just put a course together for us. That's going to be in April. They're an all year at Adams for law enforcement. That'll provide business assessment training, the active threat training to businesses, local areas, as well as for churches. So we'll be able to go and train to those different organizations. So that's been about close to a year-long project with Mid-State, but they're finally able to put that together for us. So we'll be attending that, and we'll be able to do this type of training to businesses and within the community. So great.
Board, any other questions? Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
AFAS Administrative Report.
So we spent a lot of time talking about academics and data, behavioral, all that kind of stuff. So I thought I would spend just a couple minutes and talk about our 3 encore areas, art, music, and Phi Ed. I'll just tell you some things that we're doing. We just recently had Jump Rope for Heart, and the students at French Elementary raised $2,200 for the American Heart Association to do their Jump Rope for Heart. We have a concert on March 26th for our first and second graders at the Fine Arts Center. We've been working hard on those. And then Mrs. Keller received a grant, and we got a kiln this year. So she's had 3 classrooms working on kilns. Just want to start with first grade. So this is what our first graders had made with the kiln. They are fish, and she had them use buttons for the bubbles, like they're blowing. So it was a lot about texture and color. So they first had to create it. It was fired, then they had to glaze it, and then it got fired again. So that was our first grade. Our second grade just completed owls. It was a lot about 3D, so they all have a little baby owl that joins them, and then they attach some feathers onto it. And currently our 4th graders are making pots, working on coilings, and they were starting to glaze them. They've been fired. The biggest thing that our 4th graders learned is that if the clay is too hot or too thick, they will explode in the kiln. So they learned that they couldn't be thick. So that was a learning lesson. But you know, we're not only about academics, we also do some other creative things for the students that really enjoy that, just like Brandy talked about last month with our leadership stuff, GT. So there's other things going on in buildings besides just academics.
Grand Marsh.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge our staff meeting tonight. We had lots of discussion on this board meeting and the things with Grand Marsh's concerns. And if you came down there and saw them teach every day, you would know there was nothing really happening there. So, because they do such a great job. Jenny came up and spoke on a few things, but we acknowledge that you know, the board has some difficult decisions ahead and what's going on, but the staff works hard every day with all that, and they don't let that affect the kids or anything, just so that you know that. With that, we do a lot of things down too, and she always has the cool stuff. She brings the art and all that. Our group had Read Across America this week, as we did throughout the district, and we had lots of things going on for our Grand Marsh kids. We would read a little bit in the morning announcements, a little verse from a book, and then they had to guess what book it was from, and teachers would have them in the classrooms, and we had incentives just to get them to read and to think about just the joy of reading and stuff they like to read about. So that was one of the things we were doing with that. We have we're getting ready for a couple of educational field trips, as we heard earlier, our donations that we have, that provides us a little opportunity to do some of those. We're getting excited and planning those already. With the spring coming, we're kind of needing that. We're kind of at doldrums of winter, so we're heading from that business. And lastly, we are getting ready for the forward exam down there, our 3rd and 4th graders. As we start to look at the state testing, we were talking about setting and practices and getting our kids ready so that they're more than ready for that, with the joy of reading and all those things. So that's one. But one activity, Dr. Ruth just mentioned it, and the Sheriff's Department just left, talking about building relationships. Our PBIS assembly, we had a little dodgeball game with the kids. I don't know if you saw it on Facebook. Our SROs were invited to come down, and they were getting the kids all excited. They were not able to make it, but yet the Sheriff's Department did have a representative there that actually played in the game with the kids. So they're doing a lot of things to help build those relationships, and that's what we want to keep doing. So lots of things happening, and that's what's going on at Grand Marsh.
Thank you. Middle school.
All right, well, thank you. 2 really fun things that we've had happen here at the middle school recently. We had our PBIS assembly, which was a lot of fun. There'll be some posts on Facebook where people have some pies and they're looking for something, and there's a lot of fun pictures that you can check out. And we also had a 6th grade talent show that Mrs. Clicko did, and that was really a wonderful night where we had anything from dancing, singing, playing the piano. It was truly wonderful. So looking ahead, we've talked a lot about the capstone here. I want you to know that our students are working on their resumes and their cover letters, and on March 25th, it's game day. So there's a couple of you who are coming to facilitate those mock interviews for our 8th grade students, and they are practicing and learning about the skills that they'll need for that. They are also looking forward to Reality Day, which happens April 1st. And that's happening because of the collaboration between our schools, our local businesses, and the Adams County Child Support Services. So we're really excited about those 2 opportunities, particularly for our 8th grade.
Also, I wanted to let you know that we're continuing to nurture our social emotional learning skills. And that happens from anything about being responsible, reading a room, that empathy, getting along with peers, just understanding social issues. Often we talk about it as your EQ and those skills that you need to be successful in life beyond just knowing how to do the math and the reading and the writing. To support that, we've been responding to our results from our progress monitoring surveys that our staff and our students complete. I think Barbie's going to speak a little more to that. Also, we started a new class with an SEL, we call it SEL, when we say social emotional learning. We started a new class for some 7th and 8th grade students. That's happening as an Explorer. We are implementing SEL book clubs. Our 6th graders are really excited about this. They're doing job descriptions about their roles within those SEL books. So that's another opportunity. And our 6th grade, through our Teen Outreach Program grant, has continued their community outreach that they're working on. So we've got a lot of great things happening, and the momentum's carrying us through into the spring, which we're excited for some warmer weather too. So, thank you.
Thank you. High school.
Had a couple meetings today that I thought you'd be interested to hear about. First, I met with Mid-State, at Mid-State with some Mid-State representatives, some Gunderson representatives, and what we're planning for in April is a workplace professionalism seminar for our junior class. Something we want to make an annual event if it's successful. But some of the things thrown out for this event, the juniors will learn about communicating in the workplace, interviewing skills, dressing for success and hygiene, digital footprint, which is very important to get kids to think about what they're leaving on the web, searching for a job, how do you do a job search, preparing for college, university, or military. So they'll have, looks like we'll have about 5 sessions. The students will go between. I volunteered Dr. Wormuth to lead one of them. But otherwise, all of them are led by business partners, or will be led by business partners in the community. So that goes back to one thing I mentioned last month, which was the ACT Aspire was going to be on April 15th. We're moving that. We have flexibility with that Aspire date, so we're moving that to the 21st to accommodate this, this event. So while the freshmen and sophomores are taking their ACT Aspire, we'll have juniors come in and be involved in this seminar for the day. And then seniors will have some service learning component or college prep component for that. So looking forward to working with that team and the chamber also. I didn't mention the chamber was involved in that meeting today, and Derek Smith. So they're doing a lot of the legwork too, and want our juniors to have a successful event. Another thing the juniors did, I mentioned last month, was the college and career prep class that we required. Part of the component of that class was a service component, and you might have seen on Facebook, Matt Young's, for his service component, organized a gaming event. He's part of our gaming club. He organized an event that raised a huge amount of food for the food pantry, so that the entry fee was canned goods or some non-perishable items, and it was a huge success. So congratulations. That's one of the many different service activities that students were involved in for that class. Another meeting I had today was with the county and organizing intergenerational mentoring. So we're trying to organize a summer program which will involve some retirees from the community and some of our students, where they get involved in a community service project through the summer. So we're just forming the purpose and objectives today, but looking forward to seeing that group, and hopefully we see some awesome projects. If you have ideas for projects, I think that's what we'll need. So I know the school, we know some school buildings could use some things, so that's one thing we'll offer as well. The last thing, Kathy mentioned too, the musical, 7 p.m. Thursday and Friday, 1 p.m. on Saturday. Looking forward, we have some great talent that we get to see on stage, so hopefully we can pack the Fine Arts Center all 3 nights to support those students, so come on and see them. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Instruction.
Hello. We have a couple exciting things going on, one of which I'll talk to you at the end under new business. We've decided on a new reading curriculum for K2, so we'll talk about that later. The other thing that I've been working on is with the DISIT team, all the administrators, Tom and the district leadership team. We're doing our book study on how to become a professional learning community. And so that team is doing some great work, talking about some belief statements for as a district, and talking about how we are going to best create teams next year to meet on those Wednesday early release days, both horizontal and vertical. It's not so bad when you have grade level teams, of course that's the easy way, or specific subjects, but when you have the, what do they call them? When's the, where there's,
The K-12.
yeah, the encore, what do they call them? Not onesies. Singletons, that's what we call them, the singletons. And in the book, they talk about maybe using technology to match up with teachers from other districts, or matching somehow with someone else in our district too, but you have to do it in a way that of course it is productive, not just to put them together because they're odd, right? So anyway, and the other thing that I've been working on with my interventionists is talking about new interventions for both reading and math for next year. We had one this year that reading interventionists were trained on, and we're just looking for some really solid intervention materials so that we can help the students who are needing those skills the most.
Thank you. Director of Pupil Services.
Just going to talk to you quickly about a screening we've been doing. We're in our second year. Michelle alluded to it a little bit. It's the best screener behavior and emotional screening system. Last year we did it twice. This year we're doing it 3 times. At the elementary level, the teachers take it on all of their students. It's pretty quick, 25 to 30 questions. At the middle school level, students take the screener, and so do the teachers, and at the high school level, the same. What that does is indicate to us if there are students that are struggling externally or internally. And it's really, I would say, a thermometer. It's not telling you what's wrong. It's telling you that there may be something that you need to explore further. I find that it is, and I think most of the pupil services staff would agree, it has really helped us recognize those students who have those internalizing behaviors because they're quiet. You don't know that they're struggling on the inside. So I really do think, and I'm looking forward to seeing the data. We've had to come up with a protocol, how we are going to respond. I think this year it's going a lot more fluid versus last year we had some bumps in the road, but I think it is definitely benefiting our students.
Thank you. Student Services Grant Coordinator.
I'm just going to talk to you very briefly. You're going to see me 2 more times tonight. So you're going to hear me talk about compassion, resilience, and also the Safe Routes to School resolution that we were asking you to look at this evening. But last thing I wanted to mention, I presented before that data from our Tier 3 integrated behavioral health providers and who is utilizing those services, and you will see trimester 2 coming out again after this week, so you can be looking forward to it.
Thank you. District Administrator report.
Okay, I've got a few things to just briefly mention, and then we'll get into the demographic study. The first thing that I mentioned is at our last meeting, but I'm going to continue. The district is partnering with the U.S. Census Bureau. Adams County is historically undercounted. The census impacts over $675 billion federal dollars that are doled out across the United States. It's approximately a little bit over $15,000 for every person in Wisconsin. We're going to start having a little bit more information in our schools about the census, and we're also going to have some presence at Kids Day to try to reach families, particularly young families and seniors in our community that are undercounted. So anything that we can do as a school board, school district to try to help increase the number of people that are counted in the census has a direct economic impact in our community. The school district is in the process of developing a plan to address the coronavirus. We've been working with the county health department. Laura Ginter, our school nurse, has kind of taken the lead on that. We hope to have something in the very near future regarding the coronavirus. It's very lengthy and very detailed. It'll include letters to send to parents and processes and procedures if the virus were to end up in our area at some point in the future. The second thing, or the final thing I want to mention before we get to the demographic study is we had our second facility study committee meeting last week. We addressed the conditions of our existing facilities. We addressed a few portions of our demographic study, particularly the student enrollment projections, which I'll be talking about in a minute. And at our next meeting, we're going to be touring our facilities so that that group can spend some time in each of our buildings.
Are you collaborating with the hospital on coronavirus? I mean, do they have a plan as well?
You know, I have not been. And
Okay.
with county health and through our school nurse, there's lots of information available on the UPI website and in the Wisconsin School Nurses Association as well. So I can add that. I'll certainly give them a call.
Should have a plan. And with the facilities committee, did you discuss the middle school and the administration's open?
We are discussing all of our facilities, yes.
Okay.
And the aging nature and ongoing maintenance issues in each of our buildings. Okay, the next thing, the demographic study, which you can open on your screen. I've got a few things that I'd like to highlight. We recently received this study from the UW-Madison Applied Population Lab, and I'd just like to direct your attention to a few pages. You can look at page number 5 as a starting place. And page number 5 is a horizontal bar graph, and it illustrates the number of students that we have per grade level when the study was completed. And if you were to draw a line that kind of depicts the angle of our enrollment, it would go from upper right to lower left, which is the exact opposite of what you want to look like. You want your younger grades to have more students than your older grades if you think about population in the future. And again, this was a snapshot in time, so some of those numbers have changed slightly, but they're accurate from when they were conducting this study. Then I want to just quickly turn to turn to page 10. And page 10 is a bar graph, and it illustrates the population that existed in our school district by age group from the 2010 census to a 2014 to 2018 estimate. And what you will notice is that there are less people under the age of 18 over the last decade, less people between the ages of 18 and 34, another downward trend between the ages of 35 and 44. And again, the importance of that 18 to 34 and 35 to 44 age group is that's the age of traditional childbearing. So the less young adults you have in a community, it generally follows that there's less people under the age of 18. We have less people in the 45 to 54 age group. But interestingly, over the age of 55, so 55 to 64 and 65 and over, we start gaining population, that tells us two things. A, the people that are here over the age of 45, generally over, between starting at age 45, but particularly beginning at age 55, tend to stay here. So our population is aging in place. But not only are we aging in place, but we're gaining individuals. So we're an aging in place retirement destination, looking at demographics, which does not bode well for student population over time. The next pages I'd like to look at, I'd like to just look at page 17. And I'll just take a minute and talk about pages 17, 18, 19, and 20. And I don't know if you can, hopefully people in the audience can see this. This is our baseline enrollment projection for the next 10 years. And if you look at that total line that's kind of highlighted, the baseline projection uses enrollments that assume relatively long-term progression ratios, year to year and grade to grade, will continue into the future, as well as long-term birth trends. So if we kind of look at our baseline and use that as a beginning measure, this study is projecting that we'll have, right now we have 1,527 students on the third Friday count. This study is projecting we'll have 1,049 students 10 years from now. So again, a decline of around 500 students. And this is the good news, the baseline projection. If you flip over or move down to page 18, that looks at just the last 5 years. So looking at the last 5-year trend line, and you'll notice that the student population, as you move out into time, goes down to under 1,000 students. 990 students is the projection. And this, again, is using the best available data that currently exists. So if a large business were to move into the area, hopefully that would impact these numbers. But this is looking at historical data and projecting out into the future. If you go to page 19, the 2-year trend. So just looking at the last 2 years and birth rates and our replacement values, the number of students that exit high school in the spring that are replaced by kindergartners in the fall. They're projecting that our student population 10 years from now is around 900. So about 600 less students than we're currently serving. And if you look at just kindergarten students, so using kindergarten students as a primary variable on page 20, that's a little bit better than the 2-year trend, but still not particularly good in terms of our student enrollment and therefore how our schools funded. So looking at a little over 925 students as a projection over time. So those are just some highlights from this current study. I want to talk about building level data at our next board meeting. I'm encouraging the board members and the public to spend some time with this. This study has implications that are far beyond the walls of our school district, but are valuable for our community as well in planning purposes. The next thing I'd look at, just a couple other quick things that I had on the agenda. Student enrollment, projected enrollment. Our school district did this exact same study 14 years ago, in 2006. And this might be a little hard to read on the screen, but unfortunately, in the 2006 study, and this is the worst case scenario in the 2006 study, so the trend that had the lowest enrollment, their projected enrollment is in red. And our actual student enrollment is the blue bar graph. And you can see over time that as the years progressed, they were projecting that we would be serving more students than were actually here. So using the exact same process that they used in this study, they over-projected the number of students that were actually in our buildings, in our seats, in our schools, which is frightening to me. So they were relatively close at the beginning. Those are easier projections to make. But if you look out in 15-16, they projected that we would have an enrollment of 1,857 students, and we had 1,618 students in our seats. So that's 200 less students than they anticipated. And then finally, the census data. We were able to take the 2000 census data from the 2006 study, and then add that to the 2010 census data, and then add the estimate from 2014 to 2018, and you will notice that there's a decline, and the age groups didn't quite line up. The first study went from 0 to 19, the second one went 0 to 18. But you'll notice that at the bottom, the totals In our school district, there are 5,500 less people in 2014 through 18 projected. We'll know more census data at the end of this year than there were in 2000. So our community is declining. And not only are we declining, but we're aging in place and attracting retirees. So please spend some time with this. We'll talk, like I said, I want to talk about building level data. It's in this study as well. And talk about this for the next few months as we plan for the future.
Prepared by the Applied Population Lab in the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Are most school districts using this tool?
It's become the standard.
Okay.
In our district, again, in 2006, we did the exact same study.
Okay. And it's been pretty spot on, just statewide?
It uses available data to make projections, so it's better than our speculation. The Baird model uses an attrition model when they're making projections. This, I would say, is more scientific.
Thank you.
Any other questions? They use birth trends, they do new housing starts, they've got access to census data address by address in our district.
With that, we'll move on to policy committee report. Lena.
All right, the policy committee met tonight. The following readings will go into second reading. 5310 Health Services, 5500 Student Code of Classroom Conduct, 5610 Suspension and Expulsion, 7440 Facility Security, 8410 School Safety and Crisis Intervention, 8420 School Safety, 8462 Child Abuse and Neglect, and 8462.01 Threats of Violence. 7440.01 Video Surveillance and Electronic Monitoring was pulled out and will be looked at again. And then the following, I make a motion to approve the following policies. 2340 district-sponsored trips.
Is there a second? Second by Jeff.
Yeah, if we could take out.
Yeah, that's what she made the motion just for this one.
Okay.
You want to second that then?
I'll second that.
Motion made by Lena, second by Jeff to approve policy number 2340, district-sponsored trips. Discussion. Go ahead, Jeff.
I know I'll probably be the only lone vote against this, and let me explain to you why. I strongly believe we have three functions as a board. We make policy, we approve a budget, and we hire a superintendent. Those are the three things that we should be involved in. We should not be involved in the day-to-day decisions. That's what we hire our superintendent for. And that's why I will be voting against this, because I don't think the school board, while I understand that we have a history here that we have to consider, and I get all of that. But if we entrust him with 1,500 of our students every day, I think he's more than capable of making that decision. I don't think that's the responsibility of the board. I think we overstep our purview in doing that. Again, one of the other things I know, some of our sister school districts have it come to their board also. It crosses the line. When do we say that our putting our fingers in the day-to-day decisions is enough? And even just this one thing, I think is too much. So I will be voting no on it. I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that.
Other comments? Hearing no other comments, we'll start this vote with Jim.
Yes.
Lena.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Jeff.
No.
Joanne.
Yes.
Ken?
No.
And my vote is yes, it passes 7-2. Well,
I make a motion to approve the following policies. 1213, student supervision and welfare. 3213, professional staff responsibility regarding student supervision and welfare. 4213, support staff responsibility regarding student supervision and welfare. And 5112, entrance age.
is there a second?
I second it.
Melissa? Motion made by Lana, second by Melissa to approve second readings of 2340, I'm sorry, 1213, 3213, 4213, and 5112. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll start this vote with Lana,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes, passes 9-0. Anything else, Lana?
That was it.
Finance, Joanne.
Okay, Finance Committee met at 6:45, and on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to approve general fund checks numbered 82275 through 82461, and ACH checks number 2000164 through 2000190, and 2703 through 2722, totaling $1,088,810.80, and activity fund checks numbered 30958 through 31006, and ACH check number 1137, totaling $41,972.81 for the month of February.
There's a second. Ken. Motion made by Joanne, second by Ken to approve February bills. General fund check 82275 through 82461, and ACH checks numbered 2000164 through 2000190, and 2703 through 2722, totaling $1,088,810.80, and activity fund check number 30958 through 31006, and ACH checks numbered 1137, totaling $41,972.81 for the month of February. Discussion.
Just a question. I thought we weren't going to approve activity fund checks.
We're still in the middle of this. As of last Friday, we moved the middle school and the elementary, and they're now in the general fund, so we're working through that and kind of working out the kinks before I move. So we'll still have activity through June.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion? We'll start this vote. Kathy?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lana?
Yes.
My vote is yes, it passes 9-0. Old business, compassion and resilience.
And group thank you. As you recall, this is a group that waited till about 9:15 last month. And we're glad that you're up at 8:26 tonight. So thank you. And I'm sorry about that last month.
Thank you, everybody. So we're going to here tonight to talk a little bit about the compassion resilience work that we do across the district. We have several people here. So myself, I'm Crystal Holmes, the Student Services Grant Coordinator.
Kimberlisa Prashaki, Behavior Intervention Specialist. Amy Beaver, 6th grade teacher.
Sam Storman, 3rd grade. And we also have representation at the high school as well, but the date did not work for them, so they're not able to be here tonight. So what we're going to do today is really talk to you about what is compassion resilience, why do we implement this work, and how are we implementing this across our district.
Okay, resilience, the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant sources of stress. It's the ability to maintain our physical, emotional, and mental well-being, using our energy productively to achieve school goals and meet student needs.
So what you often might hear about is compassion fatigue, or really staff burnout. You're also going to hear secondary trauma referred to quite often. And so that is the trauma that you carry with you from those that you were exposed
very different than sympathy. Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So what you just watched was just kind of a brief overview of some of the work that we are doing. We heard right there is Brene Brown, so there's lots of books that she has written if this is something that you are interested in.
Okay, how does the compassion resilience team fit in? So in the green, you will see on the left side burnout, which is exhaustion, frustration, anger, and depression. Plus that secondary trauma Crystal was talking about, the negative aspects of helping those who experience traumatic stress and suffering, and you have compassion fatigue. Staff, people are feeling overwhelmed, they have physical and emotional exhaustion, they are ill, they may change positions in order to try to feel different. That compassion resilience team enables staff to understand the burnout and the secondary trauma, giving tools and strategies to learn new mindsets and to help us avoid compassion fatigue. We are hopefully going to a place of compassion satisfaction, which means we are in a state of renewal. We have resiliency and transformation.
I don't know if you already dive or flip.
Okay, so I've been in teaching education, I don't even know, 13 years. And when I was getting my undergraduate and my graduate degrees, they gave me a lot of tools, a lot of things to help me in the classroom, but some things they never talked to me about really were things that I need to be prepared to hear, listen, and feel. Dealing with trauma, students who are dealing with poverty, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, difficult relationships. I worked with juvenile sexual offenders right out of, I was hired before I even graduated. They gave me tools to help me deal in that circumstance, but not deal with my feelings of helping students who are dealing with a lot of trauma. And I'm a really bright person. I love, to solve problems. I have a lot of energy, and I have a lot of light. And I would say in between my 3rd and 4th year maybe that light started to dim a little bit. I was starting to feel what I didn't even know what to call it, and I definitely felt like it was starting to be a burnout. I transferred positions. The school that I was with was no longer existing, and moving on and developing my skills. I started teaching at a new facility with students, again, dealing with poverty and alcohol and drug abuse, difficult behaviors, and I became a leader dealing with all of their trauma, started traumatizing me. Also trying to help my staff understand what was going on with them, and I didn't really understand what was going on with me. I started to become a different person, and it is difficult to share in this venue with a lot of people I don't know that, like, my family suffered, my relationships suffered, my position where I was a leader was suffering, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I happened to go to a conference, happened to go into a section of compassion, fatigue and resilience, and started to learn. And actually one of the first things that I wanted to do when I came to this district and I heard that they had compassion resilience team was to join, because I know personally, like, it's one thing to, you know, get involved, but when you're dealing with something where you're thinking, I'm gonna quit, I'm not good enough, I don't know how to deal with this, and I don't know how to help other people, it's quite traumatizing to myself.
So another reason why we're doing some of this, we often talk about staff turnover, and the fatigue that you're hearing Kimberly-Lisa talk about is exceptionally high rates of turnover amongst this profession. So that cost, calculating out that cost according to the Journal on Education and Finance is very difficult to do. Ronnie and I actually had this conversation. Is there anything in Wisconsin that's showing what it costs to turnover? And what they're really saying is the cost of separation, the cost of replacing that staff, the cost of training, and the value of lost productivity when you lose one staff member. So how are we implementing this? These ladies are going to talk to you about what's happening in their own buildings.
So at the middle school, our committee, we met, and then we kind of divvied up the months. And so each month a new person puts a display in the teacher's lounge and different activities that people can access. And you'll see a slide on it in a little bit. And then we, with all the snow days we had last year, we were like, okay, on the snow days we'll have the kids and parents come and play at the middle school if they're kind of trapped inside. And so it's kind of interesting. Then we haven't had any snow days.
Maybe don't say snowman.
So that was kind of cute. But we just came up with different ideas each month that we could, this is the slide, yep. So this is what it looks like at our middle school. And so each month this kind of changes out and has new ideas for the new topic of the month.
I'm just going to come back here really quick. So these ladies are also trained using a toolkit, Compassion Resilience Toolkit. This toolkit was developed by the Department of Public Instruction and Rogers Memorial and Health in 2017-2018. They had several school districts pilot this. They asked us to pilot this particular program for them, and Kimberly-Lisa can attest to this. She helped us. It did not look like this when we first started. So I'm very grateful that the toolkit is a little more solidified and can kind of help drive the work in earnest.
I called it the beta version, and now we're in the real version. And they're actually updating. I went to the site, and there's some things added that I hadn't seen from the summer. So here's sections. No, I'm not going to talk about each section. It's beautifully laid out. There's a lot of information to learn, to share, and to investigate. I'll talk about section 4. It was an activity, the system drivers of compassion fatigue. It was starting a dialogue. I remember I did this with the middle school staff on things that maybe they were struggling with locally in the school, locally and nationally. And we wrote down all different kinds of different things. And then we started to mark off all the things that we couldn't change. So the idea is sometimes we're focused on all these things that really we can't make a difference. It's something that we should put behind us. And then we tackled the things and circled the things that we could change within our school, possibly our state and nationally, and talk about staying focused on the things that are important. But that's just a little snippet. There's a lot of things in the toolkit to share.
So these are the six, well, there are five there. There are 6 areas of self-care, and then social is missing from this slide. Emotional, where we connect and we process and we reflect on our emotions. Practical, which is filling a core aspect and preventing future stress for people. Physical is improving the well-being of our physical health. Spiritual nurtures your spirit, doesn't have to be religious. Mental stimulates the mind and intellect, and adding social nurtures and deepens our relationships. And Michelle spoke earlier about the SEL classes happening at the middle school, and we teach this to our students, but making sure that we're taking that for ourselves. And then at AFE, we've got kind of a similar setup to Amy's, or at the middle school. Last year we did a water station, infused water station, and people were talking about how they were drinking more water, and that was really good for them physically, and they were spending time having conversations with maybe people about the flavor of the water. Or, and then this year we started a self-care challenge, and as of 4 o'clock tonight, we have had 108 responses from the elementary staff about a physical self-care that they've had for themselves, and then we just do a little prize drawing, and I kind of asked the staff, why are you entering this? Is this helping? And staff said that it reminds them to take care of themselves, and it encourages them to do positive things for themselves.
Another part of the toolkit you'll see is the compassion fatigue cycle. It starts off with us being zealous, idealists. We're committed, involved, and available. We're ready to problem solve, ready to make a difference. And it goes on to the irritability, withdrawal, and zombie being that last one. Hopefully when we get there, our hopelessness turns to rage. We work within silos. We have no time for humor or fun. And the idea of going through this is, it says, the good news is that at any stage in the cycle, we can learn skills and mindsets that change the trajectory towards compassion, satisfaction.
Kimberly's talked about this one a little bit within system drivers for the 4th component. And at AFE, we did a little note card activity where we asked staff to name things that were causing them compassion fatigue. And we took all of those responses and tried to put them into categories and highlighting some of the big things that are driving our compassion fatigue. And then I sat and spoke with our administration to discuss staff concerns. And our staff saw a lot of positive outcomes from that activity and that meeting. And started to see some that our administration was listening to us and making some changes to lessen that for us.
What you're looking at here is one of the commitment contracts that actually the AFE staff did this summer. So with grant funding, we were able to spend an entire week, staff that self-selected, to focus on some of their own resiliency. One of the things they talked about past what I can and can't control is what do I commit to the staff in my building? And this is kind of what the AFE staff came up with, and what behaviors indicate that they're committing as well. So this is another activity that can come out of that toolkit.
Okay, so we would put this up in the staff lounge room and talking about personal boundaries, and obviously you don't want to be the rigid wall. You're not sharing, you're not building relationships. And you want to be careful if you have loose or porous boundaries where you're sharing too much information, you are having emotional issues like within the day, and maybe you're oversharing too much. You want to have flexible boundaries. They're firm and clear, you're open to new ideas, but you are also sufficiently close to protect yourself from harm. The zone of helpfulness. I struggle with this because not the under-involved part, but the over-involved part. I really like to be part of things, but I have learned through this that, you know, everybody needs to kind of be a part of things, and if you are either under-involved or over-involved, you're not in that zone of helpfulness, having a proper work balance.
So on March 2nd, our last professional development day, we were given 90 minutes, 2 45-minute sessions, or you could stay the entire 90 minutes in one session, where different self-care activities were available to you, such as essential oils class, yoga, weight room was open, card or board games, a nature walk, geocaching, comedy videos, volleyball, letter writing, bring your own book, and the animal shelter. And staff were able to choose which activity or activities they would like to attend. At first there were some staff that were not so sure about this, or maybe caused them stress to have to think about this. But then talking with people afterwards, there was a lot of positive feedback, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And people who really enjoyed that time and comments, I wish we could start every day like this. Are we going to be able to do this again this day? What are some other options? So I'm thinking that we were talking about sending out a survey to staff, just kind of their feelings towards it, what they liked, what they would want to change. Do they have any suggestions for offerings or opportunities?
We received a lot of feedback from this particular activity, a lot of emails from staff. I think the idea behind it is that self-care doesn't have to be as big as people think it needs to be. It can be something small, like spending time with a pet, or playing a board game with a friend that will help you just reset and step away from work.
What's next? So what we have lined up for the remaining of the school year is we're going to send a survey to the teachers and staff and ask them what helped you this year. What did the Compassion Resilience team do that helped this year? So we can continue to do that. And the other thing that our committee would like to do is we're going to reach out to people that may have left the district and ask them what they enjoyed here. What do they miss about Adams? So we can use that information to tell other people and just to show pride in our work, and just sometimes you think the grass is greener on the other side, and so speaking to people that have left, what do you miss and what's here?
Thank you for your time tonight. Do you have any questions for us?
I just have one. Do we still have a staff assistance program?
Yes.
So this is a great compliment, because that staff assistance program, you know, usually takes people quite a while to access it. So, and maybe by the time they actually do it, they're really in a bad place. And so I'm really excited that this is kind of a bridge, because probably your team can sense if they need more and additional counseling or help.
Jenny Henson came to us that day and spoke about the employee assistance program that morning as well.
Cool. Thank you very much.
I was going to ask, how often do you have access to staff to work with them or implement what you guys are doing?
Well, we have our Wednesday meetings, and so not every month, but about every other month, we present something that we find from the toolkit to our staff at our center.
And then Amy spoke about changing things out in the staff lounge. So her team in her building is doing that every month, where they're focusing on a new area of that self-care. Sometimes it's about writing a message to explain why it's important to take care of yourself in that way. But every month they're changing something over for staff.
In my capacity, I would say that I deal with teachers every day. And so this type of knowledge on myself and also a toolkit is something that I can promote every day.
And at the school board convention, they had a big booth, and they were talking about how important it is to eat healthy. And they were also having large jugs of flavored water. And they are now putting, many school districts are trying this because they need to be hydrated. It is something that is very healthy, and they were showing all the different flavors you could have. So I thought that was nice that you're actually implementing that as well.
Any other comments or questions for you? Thank you very much, ladies. With that, we'll move on to new business. Safe routes to schools resolution.
Crystal's going to come right back.
Okay, so this was sent over to you before. This document is quite cumbersome. It's 121 pages, so I'm giving you a brief summary. What I wanted to share with you today is the Safe Routes to School resolution was brought to us from North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. So this commission received a grant called the TAP grant, or a Transportation Alternative Program grant. Really the focus behind this is to get more kids walking or biking to school, more so for health purposes, and then also making those routes safer for children to do so. And they would come in and then facilitate conversations and activities within our district. So this particular commission focused on elementary and middle school. So Grand Marsh, AFE, as well as our middle school, within a 2-mile radius of each of those buildings. And they focused on 5 particular areas. So if you read this, you would notice it was engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and then evaluation. So Stacy, if you can go to page 32. Maybe the top. The top one? Yeah. So map 3A is actually the site assessment for AFE and the middle school. You'll notice by looking at this that they made several suggestions from the committee who served on this team. Some of which they were looking at the start of the 4-lane undivided highway on Main Street where students would be crossing. Park Street sidewalk ends, so we're talking over by Burt Morse Park. There is not a sidewalk there for children. They described 2 intersections being of concern, so that would be Main and Brevoort, and then also Liberty and Main Street of concerns where children are often crossing the road. That we were missing a stop sign actually in the parking lot at the middle school. And that the bike racks were easily accessible at both AFE and at the middle school, but they are not up to date. So they were looking at that. Placement of a crossing guard, as well as the sidewalk ending on Pierce Street. Many students traveling over to AFE or the middle school via that route. If you flip to the next map, this is the map for Grand Marsh Elementary. You'll notice there's not much on here, and predominantly the reason why they surveyed parents and students about how are you getting to school and what does that look like. And this was a very heavy bus-in area for students, so you don't see any adjustment on this particular map. So if you can go to page 46, Stacy.
How many students are walking? Do you have that number?
I do, but I really have to dig. I can show you what it's at. All of the survey results are in attachment B in this document, so if you want to look at that later, but I can give you, it's broke down by building, percentage of students that are walking in. So what I can tell you, I have to dig through here. So what it is, it's a small percentage of students that are walking or biking, but we have roughly, I believe the middle school is at 46% are being brought in from a parent or another mode of transportation, not using our public transportation system. So what you're looking at here on this map is the actual physical recommendations that are coming down from this committee. So So based upon the 4-lane highway, they're recommending a road diet, that's what they call it, to reduce the 4 lanes so that it would be a center turning lane and only 2-way traffic moving along that road. Installing a sidewalk on Park Street, installing a sidewalk on Pierce Street, installing a sidewalk or a bike path along Ann Street or County Road M, and then installing a sidewalk or bike path along 11th Avenue, which would then run out past our high school. They're looking at intersection treatments, so this is State 13 and Liberty. What that really looks like is making sure that we have zebra striping across our crosswalks so that they are more readily visible to people traveling. Intersection treatments would also happen at the 5-way stop, or right where Bohemian Hall is at, because that is another intersection where students are crossing, and it's often difficult to get across that intersection. And then maintaining high visibility crosswalks in other areas that they already currently exist. Another area that they commented for us is that we would need to replace our bike racks so that they are up to code to where we are at both AFE and the middle school, as well as Grand Marsh. And then that would move beyond the engineering component past the map. So we're talking now about education recommendations that they're making for us, that they would provide a link to the Wisconsin DOT so that we could show motorists how they can safely move around when students are in session. And then we would consider as a district looking at field trips that would encompass walking or biking, so we would encourage students to utilize that more. Providing materials for students and families about safe ways to walk and bike to school, and then continuing our bike rodeo program for the Sheriff's Department. When they looked at encouragement, they asked us to create a walk to school week every fall so that we would encourage students to be walking into school. And then review creating a walking or a biking club. What might that look like in our district? When it came to enforcement, they were suggesting that we continue providing crossing guards, adding a crossing guard at State Highway 13 by the middle school, which that has already been done. Continue maintaining school speed limit zones, reviewing all speed limit signs and school crosswalk signs to make sure that they are up to code. And then again, that road diet is listed on here as well, so reducing those 4 lanes down to 2 with a turning lane. And then finally, the recommendations for evaluation were to continue conducting student surveys. How are they getting to school? Are we increasing the number of students who are choosing to walk or bike? Evaluating the ability of crossing guards to actually stop traffic on Highway 13. Are they going around our crossing guards, or are they actually stopping for them? And then looking at other programming that we potentially could do, like a bike fed program for the state of Wisconsin, middle school bike mechanic program, or a middle school bicycle physical education program. So if you look at pages 44 and 45, what I'm actually reading is the table of recommendations from them. They actually also tell us who is responsible for each one of these. And you'll notice that several of these are not the responsibility of the school district, but rather maybe the city or the county. I can tell you that on March 2nd, the city passed this resolution, so they have officially adopted it. The Village of Friendship has not put it on their docket yet, so they will be the next that we are asking to adopt this agenda. You'll also see they talk about the funding stream on here and what might that look like. So the gentleman from the Regional Planning Commission shared with me that basically as a community, we're looking at over $200,000. It's not difficult to do if you're looking at putting in sidewalks. And then you can apply for funding through the Wisconsin DOT, which would be their recommendation. He also described adopting this resolution as much of it is a recommendation, and it does not say shall, because then it is a requirement, with the exception of the bike racks. So the bike racks are listed in here as the Adams Church Berry School District shall, so we would need to update those bike racks. Do you have any questions about the resolution at all?
Is there any opportunity to provide bikes for children who don't have them?
So there are several grants as you walk through this document. He has a lot of attachments in here. One of the attachments is the implementation, so it's actually chapter 5 under implementation. He talks about several different funding streams. So it's at page 63. It looks like this, and so we would have to dig through all those funding streams to see if we can provide additional bicycles for children.
And second of all, who pays for the sidewalks?
So it is listed in here on how it would be encompassed. So again, that's the $200,000. If you hit that threshold, then you can apply for funding through the Wisconsin DOT.
My husband and I met with the mayor on other things, and she did talk about this, and she also has applied for some grants. So I think they're trying, you know, to do so without putting a great burden on the taxpayers. Because when they put the sidewalks in by my house, we were assessed for 5 years. So that sidewalk going from the middle school to Burt Morris.
I can also tell you that because of the nature of where some of our students live, so we do have a mobile home park on County Road M. It actually kicks some of this resolution straight to the top, and that is going to be implemented without anyone even passing a resolution, that they will be putting in either a walking or a bike trail from that mobile home park on County M into town because of how many students we have living in that mobile home park.
Board, any other questions? Thank you, Christine. New business. Oh, no, we'll have to pass the resolution first. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Alyssa, second by Lana to approve the resolution adopting the Adams Heights area safe routes to school plan. Discussion.
And that's the one that's written all out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might want to so you can see it goes out. It's called a resolution. There you go.
Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll start this roll with Melissa.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yep.
Jeff.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Lana.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
And my vote is yes, passes by zero. Russian Little League, I see Jason here. Jason, you want to call?
So in conversation with Mr. Gould, Mr. Jackson, as you're aware, our softball field at the high school has had some drainage issues, to say the least, over the last few years. And the same with the softball field that's behind, kind of behind the track or north of the track at the middle school. And in conversation with Rush Creek Little League, they have graciously offered our softball team the opportunity to play there. It would require us to help cut the grass, line the fields, and things like that. But I'm sorry if I'm taking your speech.
Well, I had an hour speech, but now I better not. So
I've got more to go.
As he reminds.
The rest of us do.
you know, the basis of why I'm here and really why I'm putting on the hat tonight as the Little League president is the fact we have facilities available, and my goal, whether it's in sports or it's with my kids or other kids or school, is to try to get the kids doing something, whether it's school or in sports, no matter what it is. And if we have an opportunity as a school, as the Little League, as the high school sports, middle school sports, whatever it is, to get kids playing more innings or spending more time at school or whatever it is, I think as a community or as community organizations, as I'm here tonight in Little League, it's doing what we can to make these partnerships work. And I think that's why I'm here today, is to say we have the ability as Rochester Cree Little League, City of Adams is also involved, and the school to have facilities that are available to our kids that we can use, and that, you know, in the days that we're talking about financial issues, and the school has them and other community organizations have them, why don't we work together on having facilities that we can use? Everybody helps maintain those, and again, the cost is spread out amongst multiple organizations. I don't see any negatives to it, and I know I've talked about it over the years, but I don't think you've played a game at least in 1 or 2 years on your high school field. Last year I actually helped the middle school, was able to get some of their games where they couldn't play on their middle school over to some of the Burt Morris fields. We do have 3 that are the right size for middle school and high school. Between the city and the Little League over the last couple of years, we've done improvements to backstops, put in the lights
So one of those things that I hope this year is helping with the JV team is that I can get some of the kids that last year only had 20 innings, maybe they're going to end up getting 40 innings in because we can play with lights, we can get hopefully more teams there, we can play games at the same time because we have two fields available. So again, I'm just here offering the opportunity to use those facilities. Again, we can work out the logistics and how those things work. I think there's 1 week that there might be some overlap between Little League season and the end of the softball season, which again, we've used the school fields every year. We have an insurance agreement with the schools. We can move our games elsewhere or our practices and be able to have you guys use the fields and take priority when you need to use those fields. Between the Little League, the city, and hopefully working with school staff, also doing some upgrades there that will work for everybody.
So would that include practice for the varsity JV teams also?
It would. So what Coach Thompson, myself, Coach Kay's here tonight as well, we've talked about allowing, we have multiple storage areas there, allowing an area in one of those storage buildings that we can actually bring some of the high school equipment there and allow them to use it so we're not transporting equipment back and forth all the time. And again, also if there's equipment that can stay there that both the high school and Little League can use, like we have a pitching machine. There's no reason to haul the high school pitching machine over to the Burt Morris fields when they already have one there. We can use the pieces of equipment and things together.
And I know you said at the end of the year there might be some conflicts with Little League. If we have regional games here, will we take priority over that? I guess that would be one of my concerns.
I think that the board didn't specifically speak on that, but I think that exactly is what we would do. We would move our games to one of the school fields. The school could take priority and use those other fields, our fields, for most part.
What field do you think that the softball team would actually use? I know not the girls softball field that's over toward the community center, or the one behind the Little League field?
So as the Little League numbers on, field 1 is the main field, the concession stand and the restrooms right there. Field 2 is the one near the library community center. Field 3 is the one west of field 1, the main field. Then field 4 is the T-ball field down and has water problems in that outfield. So any of those 3 fields are available to play. The bases are right, there's no mounds on them for softball, the lights are set up for the right distances for everything. So any of those fields work. Right now, I'd be working with Coach Thompson and finding out which field we prefer to play on. Field 1 infield is a little bit better right now. We're talking about doing some upgrades to field 2. Those would be the 2 main, well, 1, 2, or 3 could be used. Last year we actually played the middle school games on field 3 because there was still a mound on field 1. That mound has been removed.
Are you going to do something with that batting cage? Like mow it and...
Yeah, so that's one of our Little League is talking with the city of Adams on how we approach that because it's very difficult to maintain.
Right.
The funding was there last year to put the batting cages up, and now we got to work on how we're going to put something in.
And I think somebody vandalized it last year.
So if you notice, there's a lock on there. So that lock has to be maintained because if kids get in there, the netting is what is easily vandalized. So we have to be careful with that.
See, I live right across the street, so I get to see a lot of games.
A lot of it, yeah. So you can keep an eye on it.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing is will there be any type of concessions there for the softball fans?
So that is a great question. So there can be. We do not use those concessions until opening day, which of course would be essentially after your season. So that would be available. Now the city controls the water in the park and when that gets turned on, and that has a lot to do with, of course, the weather and when we can turn the water on so it doesn't freeze. But in my opinion, personal opinion, let me put my other hat on now, right, is now helping with the softball program. If there's concessions available and we can use it, absolutely. Why wouldn't we? And whether that's a fundraising for equipment for that team or it's like the school where they're using it for different organizations, I don't think that my board would have a problem with it, and essentially the Little League board controls that over that season. So I think it's a great opportunity to be able to use it as just like a basketball game has concessions.
Well, I think AD and Kim and Lily should just work this out and go for it this season. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
Any other questions for him? Thanks for coming in.
No problem.
Thank you.
Future of Grand Marsh Elementary.
Heard some presentations tonight from some community members. We've had conversation about this a few times. Knowing that there are 67 students in that building today, knowing that those students can be accommodated at AFE. I think 10 years ago there were close to 600 students at AFE, 590, is that correct, Mr. Booth? So we won't be approaching that number at all. The class sizes at AFE, by bringing the students from Grand Marsh to that building and maintaining the teaching staff that we believe we'll have, will actually be reduced at AFE. Some of the class sizes of the students at Grand Marsh will increase. Some of the students that live close to Grand Marsh will be on buses longer, obviously, if we were to move those students in. But we also believe that all of the existing staff from Grand Marsh, teaching staff from Grand Marsh, will have the opportunity to move into AFE, and we believe we can serve students well in that building from across our district.
Questions?
I would like to reference the letter we got from the staff, because it gave me some thinking points that I hadn't thought about before. One of the things that caught my eye was the food pantry in Grand Marsh will require a drive. Is there any way that we could set up a local food pantry for our families? Currently, 20 to 30 families weekly access the food pantry. So I would think if we could somehow continue a food pantry service, that it would still be a service to the students and their families. That was my first comment. My second comment was about, we hadn't discussed, would there be a larger amount of savings to the district if the middle school was vacated instead of the Grand Marsh School?
Not from a transportation perspective.
Okay. Anything else about that?
I don't have an answer to that necessarily.
They also brought up, they have a gym and sensory room, and those students take brain breaks. In AFE, is there space for these types of things?
They're already there.
Okay, that was my question. Will there still be space if everyone goes over there for a sensory room and places for them to?
It's not going anywhere.
Okay, cool.
But would the time be limited that they could get in there?
Anybody's welcome in there anytime. Luann's there most of the day. Otherwise, we have current students that have planned breaks that go in there. OTPT uses it there. There is no time restraint.
One of the things that they were very concerned about, which I am as well, is do you feel this movement into AFE will be a congested environment? Will these students get the help that they need?
I think the fact that we're putting all the resources in one building is going to offer them more services than having to put teachers behind a windshield to drive somewhere. They can be in front of children more. As far as congestion, with the fourth graders coming out, the fourth graders leaving, and the new ones coming in, we're talking 15-ish more next year than we have right now.
And most of the classes at AFE will actually see a reduction in the number of students that are in the classes.
Okay. They brought up the lunch and breakfast times. Can someone answer that?
What
Can
was
we
the question?
accommodate?
I was going to pull up the letter. What was the question?
Can we accommodate
Yes.
everyone for that breakfast?
Because right
and
now,
lunch and-
currently 4K and EC eat breakfast separately. So
Okay,
they
so
will continue to
those
eat
students
breakfast
out.
separately. We have the extra lunchroom that currently is not even used at breakfast, except for when we have our mentors come in and they meet with students. So that's always available, which currently houses 4 classrooms at lunch. So there is, and we can adjust, in the past they've had 3 lunches. The past few years we've only had 2 lunches.
And there were 590 some students. About 10 years ago, and next year we're projecting under 500, even with moving the students from Grand Marsh.
Do we feel that these decisions that we will make tonight will affect staff retention?
We're anticipating the staff from Grand Marsh moving in with potentially some changes in staffing. We're going to post for probably 2 4K positions, so there might be some teachers in grade levels that elect to apply for that. But we don't anticipate any reduction in force based on numbers.
So staff didn't say that they would just go to a different job if this building is closed? I guess I was asking about that.
No.
Okay, all right. What would happen if we waited a year?
We'd have another $300,000 to contend with in deficit, probably, approximately. We'd still have staff spending 40 minutes during the day, driving back and forth, support staff, ancillary health providers, speech and language, guidance counselors, social workers, occupational therapists.
I had a community member stop me and ask this question, so I'll pose this. If we do close this, can we actually ever anticipate we would have to go to referendum for a building program? The community member said, there's no way this community will support any kind of a building referendum if you close an existing building. So I didn't have an answer to that, so I thought I'd pose it tonight as well.
That hasn't been my experience. I mean, certainly some people might be emotionally upset about closing the building. I think we can continue to provide better education for more of our students by bringing the students from Grand Marsh in.
So if the school's closed, would the facility committee still have that school to look at and use for ideas moving forward?
I would not recommend selling that building at this time. That would be my
What would we do with
recommendation.
it then?
We'd maintain it for a year,
Okay.
at least a year.
Could we maintain the food pantry there then, once a week or whatever?
I would assume we could.
Okay.
So the facility committee could still look at that school as trying to brainstorm the best outcome, even if the decision was made tonight that it would be closed?
Yes.
Because I know we discussed something about approaching CISA, about making it a special needs school, but they said they weren't interested. Is that correct?
We talked about it again yesterday with the director of CISA 5 and the pupil services director from CISA 5.
And they're not interested?
Not at this point in time.
Because it truly has some lovely things out there. You know, the sensory break room,
It's a great facility,
It is a great facility.
without a question. You know, whether it in my opinion, if it were to come back as a K through 4th grade, pre-K through 6th grade building, it would require a lot of thought. And I think if that were to happen, we'd have to rebalance our classes. We can't, it's not necessarily equitable to have classes of 12 at Grand Marsh when there's classes of 23 and 24 at AFE. If we did some boundary changes, just looking at the density of our population, and we tried to balance classes, you almost have to come to the edge of the city of Adams and bus students south.
And one of the things that was posed tonight when it was talked about when we sold Roche Cree that it reopened as a competing school in our district, that isn't correct.
It's not a K-12 building. And if I were to sell a building, and I don't know what you did here, I would have a restrictive covenant that it could not be a competing educational facility. Or I wanted it 99 years, but the lawyers only gave me 25.
But didn't that school become a religious school, a Mennonite school?
I believe it's they're using it for professional development for that particular religion, yes.
So it wasn't a competing school? No. No. Okay. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
Move to close Grand Marsh.
I'll second.
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Joanne to approval the closure of Grand Marsh Elementary School at the end of 2019-2020 school year. Discussion. Jeff.
Dr. Woolman, could you go over what our current financial scenarios look like, especially like preparing budget? I don't know if you know that.
I don't have that up. Can I borrow your copy?
Yeah.
I did not bring my copy with me. But yeah, over time, our budget projection is based on our current situation. We are looking at a surplus or deficit starting in the next school year to approach $100,000, and then moving to about $600,000 in the 22-23 school year, to about $2 million in the 23-24 school year. As a deficit.
As a deficit.
And that includes the current referendum we have on the books through the 22-23 school year, yes.
The BEARD
That's the
model
BEARD
that we
model.
have, does that include the closure of Grand
No, it
Marsh?
does not.
Oh.
And by closing that, it's a recurring savings, correct? As opposed to
Of around
one time?
300, yeah, $300,000 to $350,000.
Is that a one-time saving?
No, it's recurring.
It's recurring.
Jeff.
So, I know we have the facility committee. I went to the last meeting. There's a lot on that agenda as far as looking at our facilities overall, making some recommendations. I don't disagree with some of the items that were brought tonight. They're very creative, and definitely a proponent of some of those. When do you anticipate that committee will have kind of a final conclusion for the board?
Yeah, I was hoping that they could make a recommendation before the end of the school year, but I don't know how realistic that is. I would guess sometime during the 2021 school year.
And that doesn't rule out potentially of reopening Grand Marsh, and that's why you recommended
Correct.
not selling it.
Correct. And I don't know if it would have its current configuration if it were to reopen. And I still want to have conversation with our friends from CISA 5 and some other organizations, but I think they're tiring of me talking about it.
One thing I didn't understand, it was mentioned not only in the letter from the teachers, but also in Mrs. Gula's handout about restructuring the boundaries. I didn't understand what that meant. If we were to keep GM open, would it be worth looking at restructuring the boundaries, which were changed 5 years ago?
I don't know what the boundaries 5 years ago, but I can tell you if you were to balance the class sizes between students at Adams Friendship Elementary in Grand Marsh. The Grand Marsh catchment area, the line that students would go to Grand Marsh, would almost come to the village edge, the southern edge of the village of Adams. We don't have density of population in the southern part of our district. We have more student population in the northern part of our district and in and around the city of Adams and village of Friendship.
And we did analyze the cost of busing, correct?
Correct.
We said we would save,
At least one bus route,
and that's $40,000.
approximately $41,000.
So is that added on to that 300,000?
Yes.
Is there any more comments or discussion? Go ahead, Jeff.
One last question. Are we allowed to run into in a deficit mode statutorily?
Yes, we are. There are districts that run into deficit. It's not, I would recommend against that from a fiscal responsibility perspective.
Any other discussion?
Question just for myself. So this has to be, for best effect, this needs to be decided tonight? Correct, we can't wait upon the facilities kind of outcome or anything?
I don't think the facility study is going to have a recommendation before the end of the school year, and we need to, for our teaching staff, and start thinking about moving into AFE. My recommendation would be to make the decision tonight, yes.
Anyone else?
Was there any discussion about moving administration offices into a different area? We had talked about that in the past, but has that conversation, is that in
I
this?
believe that will be part of the facility study conversation as well. We have the buckets up from the rating today in offices in this building.
And would we move where?
That's
That's
a
the
conversation.
discussion.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
conversation. You know, I think our district is going to, if the projections from the applied population map hold true, and right now I don't see any reason why they wouldn't as we move forward. We're going to look really differently a decade from now than we do today.
Yeah, I don't know if it's part of it to take care of, but with this possibility of closing Grand Marsh, had there been some thought of the fact that the parents of the students may decide to open enroll?
Absolutely. Every time.
And how many would that take away from the tax or whatever comes this way?
For every open enrolled student, and we're looking at ways to try to combat that. For every open enrolled student, we lose approximately $6,000. We retain 1/3 of the funding, but then 2/3 goes to the receiving school district.
So theoretically, what would that number be if Grand Marsh decided coming to town? Like have we looked at the numbers that could feasibly open and roll out and without?
I think our bigger issue is students that are electing to open enroll to virtual schools across the state of Wisconsin, and we've been talking about ways to combat that. We have about 25 students right now out of the 100 plus that open enroll out that are enrolled into virtual schools in other districts across the state of Wisconsin, as far away as Waukesha.
I just wondered if that number would be comparable to what we're saving. Would it, of that 300,000 we're saving, close to building.
That's, you're assuming that all of the students.
Well, no, I just, if there were to be, it was nice to know that 2/3 number. I didn't know what we lost when kids opened.
We did survey everybody who open enrolled at the retirement of Rocha Creek's building, and we did not lose very many students when we retired that building. So, I want to say it was less than 5, and that was who returned their surveys. So,
And I don't have that, thank you, because I don't have that
So
historical number.
it was smaller than, I think,
Another comment from Mrs. Bula's letter was about the formula that the state uses, which is totally unfair to our school district based on, and Dr. Tom shared it in a link to us about the history of this state funding and the funding inequity. The question was, are we, school district, school board, doing anything about creating a momentum for more equitable distribution?
I hope you are as individuals, and if collectively you care to pass resolutions, I can help facilitate that.
Because I do know, I sat in a meeting at the state convention about funding inequity. We're not the only school district that feels this. And currently, right now, our governor had tried to pass with our surplus money, and because he vetoed the other, because he wanted to put the money back into education, and it did not pass in this current legislature. So
I also know that the executive director of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, so your professional organization, will not take a stand on school funding, because there are many school districts that he also represents that are doing quite well.
And I know that me and Tom both have talked to Joan Baldwin in the last month, face to face, and she has no desire to change it.
and she's going to run for Luther Olson's office.
With that, is there any more comments? Questions? We'll start this vote with Ron.
Oh, boy. No.
Jeff.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
Kent.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Lena.
Yes.
Kathy.
No.
Melissa. My vote is yes. 6-3, the Grand Marsh School will close at the end of the 2019-2020 school year. With that, going on, elementary reading curriculum.
Laura will talk about the elementary reading curriculum. We're ready to make a decision for a portion of our grade levels, and I'm still working that out.
All right. Okay, good, you have that up. So I know it's late, and everyone's tired. I will try to summarize. What's that?
I said thank you.
All right, so we started our process of looking for new materials for reading curriculum back in the fall. And I started out by researching Ed Reports, which is an organization that researches educational materials and rates them. And we looked for highly rated materials. And we received several samples from the following companies I'll mention in a minute. Teachers spent time as a group and as individual delving into the books and materials to try to find the pros and cons. We had demonstrations from content experts from each of the companies that came in, and almost all of the teachers attended. There were a few that weren't able to make it. It was not a mandatory meeting, but we had a really good turnout. I was really grateful and appreciative of their involvement and of this important task. So we had demonstrations from 3 of them. From Zaner Bloser is the company, Super Kids is the program, McGraw-Hill is the company, and Wonders is the program, and then Houghton Mifflin Harcourt into reading for elementary. So the teachers took a look at all of these materials, and then I was available. I went to AFE and to Grand Marsh a couple days and had teachers stop in and looking at the materials, asking questions, letting me know the pros and cons. I know the leadership team at the elementary level discussed it and before letting me know their decision. So several were ruled out pretty quickly by Pearson. We had 2 programs, Ready Gen in my view. Teachers ruled that one out. It was a real awkward setup of how the book was. They had to go back and forth between during like the same lesson I always said it reminded me of the Catholic Mass book. If any of you have seen that, you have to go this way and that way. Which page am I on? And it didn't have quite the amount of foundational skills that we were looking for at this point for our young ones. Now, let me specify, sorry, I don't know if I had it later. I'm just trying to summarize here. So McGraw-Hill Wonders goes from K-8. Super Kids by Zane or Blozer, that's a K-2 program only. They don't have a program that goes beyond that. And then Into Reading is also a K-6 program. And then 6-8 also has the option of doing something else. Anyway, so Pearson product, Amplify product, CKLA is also another very good, well-rated program. That was ruled out because it was really content-rich, and the teachers thought the vocabulary was a little too strong for our students, since we have quite a few students who are performing below where they should be at this time. For example, they talked about in the first grade materials Mesopotamia and things like that, so it was very content-rich, and they just didn't think it would be a good fit for our kids. So McGraw-Hill Wonders is ruled out for K-2 because it lacked that really strong phonics, phonemic awareness, all the strong foundational skills that our kids need, and it wasn't as engaging as Super Kids. And then Into Reading for some of the same reasons. So after about 4 months of reviewing, Super Kids was selected by our teachers for our K-2 reading curriculum. The level of engagement is incredible with this series. It's got very strong foundational skills, very explicit instruction. It's proven to work, those techniques, that explicit instruction is really proven to work best for kids who struggle, which we have quite a few. Teachers went online and found several blogs about the program where other teachers are talking, and some of the other programs, they're like, teachers are, complaining about this, it's boring, it doesn't have enough of this or that, and really failed to find any negative remarks at all about this program, about Super Kids. Additionally, my teachers used it in my previous school when I was elementary principal for 3 years before I moved to here. Very high rate of success after our first year. Our students started the beginning of the years. First graders, we had 60% of our first graders in the red on our PALS assessment, which is their reading readiness. And by the end of the year, every student was in the green, performing where they should be. So, and I know people who work in WASA, they use it in WASA as well and have had success. I think Jenny said she used it at a previous school and liked it. Someone else has a child in private school that uses it, and her child comes home and talks about the Super Kids. There's some characters, I think like 8 total, and a dog. So the kids get really involved in the characters' lives, and they grow. These kids grow as they go from kindergarten to 2nd grade. So with the kids, they grow. So they'll come home and tell their parents stories about, I'm trying to think of Al or Cass or whatever, and parents ask the teachers, do you have a new student in class or something like that. So the engagement really keeps them learning. Let's see. So anyway, for those reasons, that is why our K-2 teachers and administrators have selected the Zane or Blozer Super Kids. And again, that's only a K-2 program. We're not quite ready. 3-4 have an idea of what they want, but we're waiting for 5 through 8. We have another meeting this week and another content experts doing a webinar with, 5 through 8 anyway. So we have a decision to make at the middle school level. So I'm asking that you approve our new curriculum materials. The quote is up there. I don't know if I need to.
How many years does this cover?
How many years?
Years, yes.
This is a 1-year
That's a 1 year.
Yep, this is a 1 year, and we just have to buy the student, and I don't have what that would cost.
Okay.
But this is all the teacher materials and hard books. We would have to buy the student books. So I'm not sure, I'd have to look at the breakdown. Student books we would purchase every year. And they give us a lot of freebies. I don't think it's listed on this sheet, but we got some freebies listed.
You said your professional development, 16,000 is free?
for, what I have experienced is that the trainer will come in the beginning of the year and spend a full day training, and then she'll spend time with the individual grade levels. At my previous school, I had her back in October, like the beginning of October, so the teachers just delve into it, and then they have a lot of questions, right? And want to know more, and then they want to make sure they're doing it right, because when you sit in a training the last week of August, it's really hard to remember everything when you actually go in the classroom and try to implement it. So they'll come back, and we'd have to look at the schedule of when things are happening, but several days. And I know the I got to know her from 3 years of training at my other school, and she came to present the materials, and she's really good. She'll observe in the classrooms, and she'll give like a 2 or 3 page email with specific details to the teachers of what they need to do to, perfect it.
So this is just 1 year that it would cost that much?
Yes. And then the next years are just the student books.
The consumables,
Okay.
so
The
it's a
consumables.
fraction
Yeah.
of.
Okay. So is it basically just books and curriculum that way, or is it a software program underwriting it?
There are online materials. All the book companies have online materials
Okay.
now, so they can play games and do, extensions of the learning.
Okay.
But there are hard copy materials that are provided.
So how much percentage time would be using like technology? Do you guys know what like the breakdown of how much would they be on technology? How much would they do in books?
It's
Hands-on?
primarily books. The technology they would use on more of a daily basis is to bring up on the smart board, like the story that they're reading for that day. And it follows like with a yellow highlighter, it'll read it for them, something like that. But for the most part, it's the student hard copies. It's not where you park them on the Chromebooks and they do something on their own. There are also, what they call them 10-minute tuck-ins, some tier 1 and 2 interventions that when our tier 3 students will be with the interventionist, those students in the classroom can work on additional skills. So it's kind of got, and all the book companies really have that these days, differentiation and built-in classroom interventions.
Is there a built-in rigor for those students who might be beyond? You said you were looking for appropriateness for our particular, but there are some gifted kids, so is there?
When the content expert was presenting, that was a concern of some of the teachers because we did really say, the explicit instruction and it's great for struggling learners. And she did provide them with some great ideas for what you would do to work with the students who were above average.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's not considered a remedial program. It's considered a general ed curriculum. Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Is there a motion?
Not second.
Motion made by Melissa, second by Joanne to approve the Zahner Blosser reading curriculum for grade kindergarten to second grade. Do we need to put a cost in there, not to exceed? Just do the.
That's the quote, right?
That's the quote.
For next year.
Okay.
57,702.
Not to exceed 57,702 and 42 cents. Is that okay with your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion. Hearing none, start this vote. Jeff.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Lena.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
And my vote yes, passes 9-0. With that, there's nothing else on the agenda. Is there any reason not to adjourn? We're adjourned at 9:40.